I'm Dave Nelson, and joining me on the host panel this time around to talk about the week's science fiction news and to dig into our discussion topic, Brad Ludwig and Corey Scott. How you guys doing?
Good.
Excellent.
Welcome back, my friends.
Good to be here.
Corey, when was the last time you were on?
Was it when we had Tom Merritt on?
Possibly, yes. You are
Yes.
correct, sir.
I know I was on that show. I just couldn't remember if that was the last time I was on or not.
Yeah, it was the last time, actually. Great show.
It was a great show because of Tom.
Great guest. But I think we've got somebody on this week to either equal or surpass Tom Merritt. And he is a cartoonist and freelance illustrator. He is the creator of the webcomic Starcrossed, producer of the Citadel Cafe and Comics Coast to Coast podcasts. Welcome back to the SciFi Geeks Club, Mr. Joel Duggan. Joel, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man, and thank you for throwing me under the Tom Merritt bus at the beginning of the show.
Better live up to that, sir.
Yeah, I'm happy that Tom is a friend so that I can at least joke with him about this later. But yeah, I'm happy to be back, and as we were discussing just a few minutes ago, it has been just a little over a year since I was on the show.
April 13th or something like that?
Yeah, hopefully that wasn't a Friday.
No, it would have been a Wednesday or a Thursday. I don't think we've ever recorded on a Friday.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense. Because I feel like, we do Comics Coast to Coast on Thursdays. I actually just recorded an episode earlier tonight, and I feel like the last time we did this, it was like a double header for me. It was like, podcast, dinner, then podcast again.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the world of Galactic Netcast, because we record two shows back to back every Thursday or Wednesday. So I know exactly. I feel your pain, man.
You guys mean business?
Yeah. We've expanded quite a bit since you were on. We do a couple of new podcasts. We do Weird World Weekly and Brad's new one. Well, not really new anymore, Brad.
Yeah, it's been since March.
Yeah.
Still the
Nice.
youngin.
Yeah.
That's Adventure Party.
Adventure Party. It's all about board gaming and stuff like that.
And RPGs.
Yeah. So.
Ooh, fun.
And I've been hitting up Matt pretty seriously, as serious as Matt and I get, about doing another show too.
The horror movie.
That
Right?
we would like to do something having to do with horror, so I can win my wife's respect.
And we're saying horror, not horror. Just to,
I think either one.
okay. Bring out the horrors.
What?
So,
How did we get here?
Joel, tell us, give us an update since the last time we talked. What's going on with you? Any update? Anything new with you?
Yeah, actually, I did my first children's book illustration cover recently. On May 9th, Alison Delory self-published her second children's book here in Halifax. She's a local author, and I did the cover of Scotia Sinker. It's a sequel to her first book, Lunar Lifter, in which Cameron and Aaron, two young kids, use magic markers to turn a cardboard box into, at first, a rocket ship in Lunar Lifter, and then in the book that I did the work for, a submarine for Scotia Sinker. For a local kind of Halifax, Nova Scotia story, the kids take the submarine that they make off the coast of Nova Scotia and have some adventures, and there may or may not be mermaids and sharks. I don't know. You'd have to read the book to find out.
Cool. That's exciting stuff.
Yeah, it was really great to work with her. She self-published, so there was no kind of middlemen. It was me working directly with the author, so it's her IP, it's her baby, and being able to work that closely with an author is always a really nice treat for me. It allows me to kind of not bend the rules, but it really allows me to deliver exactly what they're looking for. You don't have to worry about an editor. You don't have to worry about a publisher wanting, certain things. I actually referred her to the same people that printed my book 3 years ago. So she got a great quality print here, kept all the business local here to Halifax, which is something to be said now these days, that you can actually publish a book and do it all in your city. I think that's a really cool thing. So that's one of the things. Yeah, that's one of the things that's new. Since the last time I was on, I may have been doing work for them last April, but I did a lot of work over the past year for collegehumor.com. I'm hoping to do some more stuff for them this summer. So if you go to if you just go to joelduggan.com, you can see a lot of the college humor stuff that I've done over the last year. And trying to think of what else is going on. I've got a new book in the works. No title yet because it's just an art book. But I'm in the process now of kind of laying it out, figuring out how long it's going to be, getting a quote from the printer. The work is done. The artwork is pretty much ready to go. It's all been scanned in. I'm just trying to figure out, like what page length it's going to be, what additional content I want to put in it. It's going to be a sketchbook, a collection of my brown paper sketches that I've been doing over the last year and a half or so.
Cool. Can't wait to see it, man.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I'm excited. It's I've picked up several sketchbooks over the last, I don't know, I want to say 6 months or so from artists that I'm fans of, kind of seeing how they do it, and it's such a fun thing to have a sketchbook, from an artist. So I'm looking forward to doing my own. It's kind of like it's one of those little check marks on the old bucket list.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on, Joel.
Happy to be here, man. Let's talk some nerdy stuff.
Yeah, let's get into the news. Here's the news headlines this week in the world of science fiction. Science fiction writer John Scalzi signs $3.4 million deal for 13 books. The author approached Tor Books, his longtime publisher, with proposals for 10 adult novels and 3 young adult novels over 10 years. Some of the books will extend the popular Old Man's War series, building on an existing audience, and one will be a sequel to Lock-In. David Duchovny hints there could be even more X-Files in our future. The actor spoke with Entertainment Weekly and touched on his lack of interest in doing a full-sized broadcast season of 20-plus episodes, but said he believes something more in the line with the 6-episode run could be feasible to pull off for himself and co-star Gillian Anderson again in the future. He said, "Certainly, we didn't bring it back with the idea of ending it." Company spent $97 million to make its headquarters look like a starship. The building, with its distinctive saucer shape and oval nacelles, is the headquarters for Chinese game developer NetDragon Websoft, whose CEO is a huge Star Trek fan. The company did make sure the design was okay with CBS before beginning. Fox is producing a new League of Extraordinary Gentlemen film. After almost becoming a TV series a decade after the original movie, the studio is now bringing it back to the big screen. Unfortunately, there's currently no other information about the project. We don't know who's writing it, how loosely it may or may not be adapted from the comics, when it might come out, or who might be starring in it. And finally, DC's Convergence concludes. The event has eliminated the collapse of the multiverse from the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, and has apparently undone every DC reboot since. Because of the events in Convergence number 8, just about every Earth that was ever published in DC history appears to now still exist, and the stories from those worlds can now be told in continuity. All right, where do you guys want to start? I know Brad's got something to say about that last story.
Nope.
I think we should start there. Basically, DC has erased, what, about 30 years of history, basically?
DC, no, they've unerased probably about 80 years of history. What they've done is they've taken all the times when they've erased it before and said, okay, now you can play with these things again.
So they're, instead of being exclusive, they're being inclusive, it sounds like.
It finally became a, wow, we keep cutting off our toes, and now we've suddenly found that we can't walk very well anymore. Maybe we should have toes again. That's my analogy. Basically what it is they said the New 52 for the last few years has been it. That was all there was. They didn't want to play in the old fields. A bunch of the characters changed. A bunch of the fan favorites went away. And now they're saying, well, maybe we can bring those fan favorites back if the story is right.
All right. Are we all... question for you, Corey. Do you like this? Do you like what happened?
When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, what really matters is, are the stories any good? I didn't have a problem with the idea of the New 52 because I've been through the original Crisis. I've been through Flashpoint. I've been through Zero Hour and many other things that they've done. My problem with the New 52 was in what actually the stories were. You know, I didn't like the direction they took the characters. I don't like Angry Superman. I don't like depleting the Batman family and sort of condensing down to Robin being an internship program. So it doesn't matter if everything's available if they don't do good stories to match it. I think what this is saying is that they're making everything now available to the writers who want to write those other characters. Maybe that will bring some of those creators back. Greg Rucka did a couple of books about the question for Convergence when Rucka had left when the New 52 started. So it was nice to see him come back to a character that he had helped create. Maybe that means that other people come back too.
All right, Brad, you got to say something on this. You can't hold your tongue completely.
It's ridiculous. You know, they actually restructured the universe to have 52 different dimensions, and on each of those different 52 Earths existed everything that was before. So I don't see how this. I'm trying not to swear because I'm just so angry about it. How this BS does anything good. They had the structure, and it's just like they've
Effed it up?
Well, yeah, and DC fell prey to its own success when they released Identity Crisis and did a 12-issue maxi series and did like one of the greatest mystery arcs in 12 issues that involved the entire DC universe, and when you got to the end of it, you're like, wow, that was just really an amazing storytelling adventure that you took me on. And then they did, oh crap, Infinite Crisis. And then they did Final Crisis. And then they did Trinity. And then they did all this crap over and over, and some of it was good, but you as a comic book collector had to shell out a lot of money to be involved in these events, and you kind of spun the wheel as to what was good and what was utter crap. And some of it really contributed to the universe, but Trinity was it was a waste. It was awful. And then to have them do Flashpoint, which I understand that, you know, they wanted to reinvigorate comic book sales. They wanted to reinvigorate and kind of etch a sketch and start over. You know, they had 80 years of continuity that they had to tiptoe around. I get that. But for them to tack this on top of it, I mean, Convergence was just... Part of me wonders if Convergence wasn't a way for them to bring back Parallax. I keep going back to the legal precedent set by Shazam and Captain Marvel. DC bought Fawcett Comics, did not use the character Captain Marvel, and when Marvel came along and said, well, our company's named Marvel, we're going to create a hero named Captain Marvel. And they released the comic book, and DC promptly sued them, which led to a landmark decision of if you don't use your character, your named character, within a certain time period, you waive the rights to use that name, to use that character. And I'm wondering if Convergence wasn't a way for them to take all this garbage that they've created in the past and for some silly reason hold on to it.
That would not surprise me. That, you know, you once you started getting into the copyright stuff, man, that's exactly where my head was going. And it seems like a corporate decision, not a creative one.
Yeah, it doesn't... And I've thumbed through bits of it, so I have a very slightly informed opinion on Convergence, and now they're going to be doing Divergence. Just stop. They need to. They've fallen victim to their own greed. It feels like they had some success and they just keep dipping back into the wallets of their readers, and they wonder why their readership is slowly ebbing away. And it's not necessarily due to digital. I think that's a cop-out. And they just need to focus, like Corey said at the beginning of this, focus on good writing, focus on good artwork. You know, craft a story that's worth a damn, and people will come.
Yeah. See,
Yeah. Go ahead. Well, I was gonna say, like, what surprises me about this kind of stuff in DC is because DC, it's now DC Entertainment, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's owned by Warner Brothers, and some of the best stuff that's happening in DC Comics right now is happening on the CW,
Yeah.
right?
Say
Flash is fantastic. How are these people not talking to the guy that produces Flash and is producing the new Supergirl show and learn a few things?
They
And
write the Flash comic.
yeah, like it just
And Jeff Johns, I mean, Flash is, when I think Flash, it is one of two people's baby, and that is Mark Waid, or that is Jeff Johns. And Flashpoint really felt to me like a blatant usage of a character that he loved to make something happen. And yeah, it made sense. Flash does have the ability to move through time better than most characters. That is known. And you have Rip Hunter and other people, but not well known. And it was a great exploration of, the human condition. Can versus should, and other. It was a great opportunity, but
But remembering Flashpoint, it didn't seem like the initial storyline was supposed to be the change all of reality storyline that it became. Like, yes, it was for that story, but not for the ending. It wasn't supposed to launch a new universe. The problem that I had with Flashpoint is that it felt like what they turned into the New 52 from it came out of almost nowhere. And it seemed like it was like they just wanted to jump into that all of a sudden. Somebody editorially said, wait, we just need to relaunch everything. That was when they were having lawsuits about the ownership of Superboy and a bunch of the Superman characters against the heirs of, I think it was Joel Siegel. I don't think it was Schuster at that point.
Siegel.
Yeah, so, and Convergence seems the same sort of way. Convergence was really, it's been referred to as a Band-Aid while they were moving coasts, while they were moving from New York over to California. Convergence was just a 2-month, let's throw some stuff out there, and so we have books on the shelves, but it wasn't supposed to be as big of an event as it turned out to be. I think, again, it's like, oh, well, we have this opportunity to, people are not taking to the New 52 right now. We can relaunch a bunch of things. We've seen the success of this Batgirl book. We've seen the success of books that aren't this total darkness that's going on in the other titles since we've relaunched. Let's take this and make some new books and new story ideas and turn Convergence into more of a world-shattering event than what it, I think, was originally planned. But that's been going on for the last 10 years at least. Final Crisis, there were a bunch of spin-off miniseries that came from that that kind of went against what Grant was doing in Final Crisis. There was a whole thing with the New Gods that he was doing, and they had another miniseries that completely contradicted it. So I think it's more of a problem with DC's editorial. You're right, grasping the straws for a long time, but Zero Hour wasn't a great event.
No,
you go back to the
it's
early
not.
90s, DC's been in dire straits off and on again for a long time. And I can say that throughout that time, there have been books that I've loved and books that I just loathed. Justice League Extreme is a very good example.
Oh God.
The amount of times that they screwed up and had to reboot Legion of Superheroes. Jeff Johns fixed Hawkman, and then they did a Hawkman series where they unfixed him almost immediately. So again, if this gives Mark Waid the reason to come back and say, now there's a Superman I want to write, and if DC lets me write it, I'll come back and I'll do stories with that, then this works out great. I'm not looking at Convergence as being a good thing. I'm looking at what happens next could be a great thing.
All right, I have a question for you guys. Who published League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was published through ABC. It was Alan Moore's books. It was done through Wildstorm. Then Wildstorm got acquired by DC, and it ticked Alan Moore off because that was exactly who he did not want to be in business with. So he wound up leaving almost all of the ABC titles when they went there. I think the only thing he's continued on once in a great while is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but all his other books he abandoned.
So how do you guys feel about the Fox making a new League of Extraordinary Gentlemen film?
If they can. I think. Well, no, I think that if they could do it right. I it the only thing is it's the second one more so. It's pretty dark, you know. And by the time you get to the Black Dossier, um, they're tackling things that you really wouldn't have in a film, and not have it be a hard R.
What kills me is this was almost a TV show. I think it would have probably worked better as a TV show, don't you think?
Possibly, it would have given it more ability to stretch its legs. I think the real question is, are they going to try to Americanize it again? Because that's the thing, is you get Alan Moore, he's decidedly British, and his stories benefit from that. When they made this first movie, they included Tom Sawyer, who was not in the comics at all,
And Dorian Gray.
to give it more of a Anglo slant. And I think that's a problem, is that Hollywood gets these properties, but they don't trust the properties, or they don't trust the audience to embrace the properties. And if you're not going to go into it wanting to do the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen as Moore proposed it, then why do it?
Yeah, call it something else.
Don't you think that it's been more than 10 years since the film came out, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, when's the last time you
Yeah.
saw Sean Connery in
Well,
anything?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
That was the movie
2003.
that he retired.
Oh, really? I did not know that. That's
That was
interesting.
his last one now.
Don't you think that America, United States, and North America has embraced British TV and British movies more in the last decade or so? So I think they could probably pull off more of a true to the comic movie, don't you think?
I think America has. I don't think that Hollywood has.
Stupid
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good analogy. I mean, what we're talking about here is essentially what people would just clamor for is Downton Abbey with superpowers, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like that would be fantastic. I don't know a lot of kind of unknown or lesser known titles like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, or getting into like Infinite Crisis and multiple universe stuff. The thing that I find about these comics when they're made into movies or made into TV shows is the mistakes that are made is that they're not accessible. You know, once you start getting into multiple universes, it's not accessible to the average person. So I mean, all the people that go to conventions, they're going to get it. They're going to be on board. But the people that don't, which is where you make your money, need to have some sort of jumping off point. And even when I saw the 2003 film, I didn't really find that it was very accessible. So I think if they're going to do, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen as a film, from what little I remember about the lore, it's like kind of like a steampunk and classic literary figures. Is that the
Yes.
that's kind of the gist? Like they'd have to go with maybe a more concise, smaller team. Don't try to adapt the books. Take the IP and write something new. Write something for a modern audience that's going to be good. Grab, I mean, obviously he's probably done with superheroes for a while, but like you need someone like Joss Whedon or other really established movie writers that are not necessarily currently working in comics to then work with the people that own the IP and the comics editors and stuff like that to come up with something original that stays true to the spirit of Leagues of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but doesn't get clamored up in the, what's the word I'm looking for? The complexity of how comics can be to an outsider,
There is a line you have to walk between being the super fan and true to the source material, and then being open to embracing people who are a little bit more in the layman category. You want to get a mainstream audience as well, but you don't want to let down the people who were always there supporting your property. I think Hellboy is one of the properties that managed it very, very well, because Hellboy's mythology is huge and kind of incredible and very deep. But when you watch the movies, you get pretty much everything you need to know in those films. And I think Marvel has done that incredibly well by condensing the amount of years into single films and then trilogies, whatever it takes to make the whole universe that they've done. But for each character, they've distilled it down into one sharp film to start out to get you to understand where you're starting from. And I don't want to say that we should play down to the intelligence of the audience, because then you don't lift the intelligence of the audience. I think people are smarter than what we often give them credit for. I just also think that when I watched Watchmen, it was a very, very good adaptation with a smidge of a change in the ending. I just don't know that it was inviting for everybody. I think it was dark, but the original story was dark. There may have been a way to bring that a little bit forward for people who weren't the super fans. But it was nice to get the adaptation as it was.
And I think the other thing, too, that if there's a timing thing, too, I mean, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen now has a different audience. They're educated by Marvel. Like, they've paved the road. So you can be a little bit wild. But even Marvel is taking baby steps. I mean, like, they still haven't really given you the full deal on Thanos. Like, it's taken probably, 4 bumpers at the end of films, 1 decent part in, what was he in?
Guardians.
Guardians of the Galaxy, where he actually spoke, and you really get to see him and see what's up, and learn who he was and that he's the boss applesauce, right? And it's taken all of that to get the general public ready for the Infinity Gauntlet and the crazy crap that's coming. That's really out to lunch as far as regular sci-fi is concerned, but not. It's kind of just normal. Hey, it's Tuesday in comics, and they've taken their time, and I think League of Extraordinary Gentlemen could go into this pre-prepared audience. It's just that it has to be careful how fast it goes. I mean, even if you take one film or a key film like Thor that introduces some really out there kind of theories into the Marvel universe for the movies, without that movie, you like Loki and this invasion through this portal in Avengers would be a lot harder to swallow. But since you've gotten to know Loki and gotten to know Thor and the Rainbow Bridge, and everything else, it's a little bit easier to kind of deal with, right? It's more about. It seems a little bit more about technology than it is, about mythology, and I think that, they could do it very well. I'm trying to remember. Did you guys like those Sherlock Holmes movies with Robert Downey Jr.?
I think I saw one of them. How many were there?
There were 2 so far.
Okay, yeah, I think I saw part of the first one. Not a really big fan of Sherlock Holmes myself.
I like the first one better than the second.
Yeah.
I mean, they were entertaining,
right?
But I mean, that to me would be kind of an example of what not to do. Like it was too. It was like what you said, Corey. It was talking down to the audience.
It was taking somebody who is meant for one genre and trying to make it into a different genre. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too. Is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is a great name for an action series, but the books aren't that. They're cerebral stories. They're stories that are slower paced. You have to think your way through it. It's a lot of Easter egg stuff too. That's why they're so engaging. But you take that and you put it into, we've got to have car chases, and we've got to have a giant ship that goes through a city, and we've got to have things blowing up and people fighting each other. Then it's not the book that people thought it was going to be. And that's probably what ticked off Sean Connery when he was doing it, is he thought it was going to be one thing, and then he got something else entirely.
Back to my original point, it might make a better TV show. In fact, what's that show that's on HBO? It takes place back in the 1800s in London, in England.
The Copper?
No, it involves like vampires and a lot of mythology.
Oh, you're thinking of Penny Dreadful?
Yeah, Penny Dreadful. Yeah,
that's on Showtime. Yeah.
Showtime. Okay, so that works really well on a network like Showtime. So I really think that something like this, as dark as it is, and it being an anthology, it's a comic book series, would work really well, better on TV than like it's the whole Star Trek argument, right?
Yes.
Star Trek works, I believe, better on TV. They've tried to make it into Star Wars, which mixed results, really, with the J.J. Abrams universe. So I think something like this would definitely work better on TV, in my opinion.
Yeah, imagine steampunk meets Game of Thrones.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so speaking of Star Trek, let's talk about the Starship building in China. This Chinese game developer, NetDragon, Websoft, they made their headquarters into a giant starship. Have you guys all seen? I'm sure you guys have all seen the picture, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So the first headline I saw was the Starship Enterprise. I thought it looked more like Voyager than any of the other than the Enterprise.
Or the Enterprise E.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I could see the Enterprise E definitely. Yeah. What? Leave it to like the head of a Chinese game company to use the millions, if not billions, of dollars to make a monument to the thing that he loves. Like, he's a big fan of Star Trek, and he actually contacted CBS and asked if it was okay, which and they said that it was the most unusual request they've ever had.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, I've got this extra $97 million just laying here. You think I could spend it on something that's going to make you guys look even cooler? I don't know. Sure. Hey, Pete, what do you think? Pete says it's okay. Yeah, this is just a sign that nerds have gained all the power, all the prestige, all the money, but we're still nerds. You know, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think it's awesome. If I had millions of dollars, you know, my house would have bat poles. I would have a bat cave. I have dreamed my entire life of having an original Volkswagen Bug done up to look like the Batmobile from the TV series.
That would be awesome.
That has always been my dream, and funds would be incredible to have that and do it with. But yeah, this is just a great time.
From all accounts, inside SpaceX, they have a number of geeky items. They've got like a full Cylon, like I think the original Battlestar Galactica series Cylon outfit, and some other very, very geeky stuff Elon Musk has put into that headquarters. So I can only imagine there's got to be something inside this building that also is very Star Trek-ish, don't you think?
I would think so.
Yeah, I'm sure that the CEO's office is decked out with lots of paraphernalia and, you know, probably some original, maybe, you know, original uniform or, you know, something. The only thing that I think it's cool. The only thing that bothers me is the price tag. Now, granted, I'm sure they had it. I'm sure he had the money to do it. I'm kind of wondering whether his workers could have used a raise.
Yeah.
You know, like when your CEO spends $97 million on a new complex. I mean, sure, would the complex have costed $90 million to build a box that did the same job, and he just kind of upped it to kind of make it look like the Enterprise, or was most of the cost into the kind of like design and styling of it? I mean, because if it's still a high-functioning building, a better place, you know, a good work environment. Like if it has a lot of benefits for the employees, well then sure. I mean, I think it's great. But if the cost of it and the design of it is really where all the money went, I don't know. If I was an employee of that company, I don't know if I'd be thrilled. Maybe what if you're the Star Wars fan that works there? Huh? Like what happens to that guy?
His job's always on the line. Watch out for Smith. He's the Star Wars fan here.
But the other thing to think about, though, is what if this is great advertising for them and puts them in line to get a contract? It's suddenly the people who are working on Star Trek go, hey, we should go to the Star Trek building. Oh, what do you guys do? Oh, we make these video games, Heroes of Might and Magic. They've been around for 20 years. You may have played them. And we would like to maybe make some video games based off of your licensed properties. Oh, that's actually not a bad idea. I had never heard of this company name before, but when I looked them up, I knew what their product was, and they're getting a lot of eyes on them right now. And if they get the right eyes, it could turn out to be very lucrative.
You know what these guys should do? They should take some of their billions of dollars they're making and give it to some of these independently. No, better yet, I was going to say give money to these independently produced Star Trek like web series. But no, they should go and like buy. If they got enough money, they should buy Paramount or CBS and get Star Trek back on TV. That's what they should do.
I think if they had that kind of money, they wouldn't have asked permission.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, we're gonna buy you and give ourselves permission to make this building. How about that? Okay, good. Done and done.
But they should take some of those people who've been doing the fan films and utilize them if they wind up getting the license. Say, hey, why don't you come over and help produce content for these things?
Yeah, that'd be cool. All right, so moving on, we got a couple more stories to go. David Duchovny says that there's the possibility of a second mini-season of the X-Files revival. They've got, 6 episodes?
Yes.
Winter 2016. I want to say it's the NFC Championship game night they're going to premiere in January, I think. I believe. But he says that... I love the quote, certainly we didn't bring it back with the idea of ending it. So the 6-episode miniseries is not the end of the X-Files. And there was a part of this story I didn't include where he actually got emotional when he saw the script. Not because it was a great script, just because looking at it with their names on it, and because they've had this series in the works for 3 years, and he got very emotional about it.
I think he said not because it was a sad script. I don't know that he was... Not because it was good, just because I read it and I cried. I couldn't believe I signed up for this. They got me a second time.
Yeah.
Are you guys excited for the X-Files?
Well, I'm not a huge X-Files fan. I mean, I like it. It's available on Netflix, but I haven't gone out of my way to rewatch. I watched some of it when it was on TV, but I didn't stick through the whole series. However, I'm really happy that it's coming back in a short miniseries format. I cannot list the number of really good shows that I have caught on Netflix and other ways, and they've been between 6 and 10 episodes. And they're concise. They don't talk down to you. It's smart writing. They've given themselves limitations, which means they have to chop the chaff and give you the good stuff. And I say the exact opposite about shows that are on network TV that go 22, 26 episodes, where the whole middle of the season you're just like, oh God, is it over yet? Like, can we please get to the climax that you're repeating like all these plot points over and over again, and it feels so watered down. So I'm for all the diehard X-Files fans out there, I'm super happy to see that it's going to be something that's hopefully going to be of high quality and really concise, and it will probably bring me back into it because now that I'm no longer in university and had all this time to watch X-Files when it was on, I don't have a lot of time, so an investment of 6 episodes is doable.
Yeah, no, British TV, they do that all the time. They have short seasons, and it works for them. Yep. You're totally right, Joel. I'm on board, too.
6 episodes is an event. 22 episodes is a show, and when you have a show, you have to have filler, you have to have a big writer's room and try to figure out and timeline this whole thing out. You have 6 episodes, you get the original writers to come back and do an episode here or there, and they don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but they get to do it because they love it. And that's what's happening here is we've got some of the original writers back, we've got the original cast back. It feels like a huge deal as opposed to we're bringing the show back after 10 years, kind of like Family Guy. We saw how that worked out.
And and it's what's sad is this is spurring on a bunch of revivals, like the Full House thing. Why?
Yeah.
Because Full House was beloved, and I have no problem with that. I am not a fan of the show, but the amount of people that were, and the fact that they're taking it into the next generation, I can appreciate that. I think that that's a smart idea. There are shows on Netflix that I have no interest in. That Richie Rich show, I would have sworn, okay, I'll check out a Richie Rich show, and then I saw it, I'm like, no, this is a Nickelodeon or Disney show. This is not aimed for me. Fuller House is not going to be aimed for me either, but Girl Meets World came out, and it's the same sort of deal. It's had a new audience, and it has a built-in audience. I think that's smart.
All right, valid argument. Different strokes for different folks. I can see that. I'm just excited to see where these characters are now after this much time. Like, what's A.D. Skinner doing? Is he still with the FBI? Are Mulder and Scully actually in a relationship now? There's all these questions that I can't wait to get the answers for.
I want to know if there's any way that we can see the Lone Gunman again.
Well, one of them's dead, right?
I think they all died.
Oh, really?
In the show, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
That
Well,
tore me up.
it's sci-fi. They can bring them back somehow, right?
That's my hope.
We didn't really die.
Just put them in touch with DC.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so finally, John Scalzi signs $3.4 million deal for 13 books with his longtime publisher, Tor Books. I don't know if you guys, we were talking about this before the podcast started. You guys aren't really that familiar with John Scalzi's work. I only know him through his titles, and I always hear his books mentioned by other people, like the Old Man's War series. Sounds very interesting. Red Shirt Diaries, obviously, and Lock-In sounds very fascinating as well. Are you guys excited that we have 13 more John Scalzi books in the next 10 years to look forward to?
When I saw the amount that he was getting paid for 13 books and knowing what kind of critical success he's had, I thought he would have gotten more, unless this is like an upfront and he would still get.
That's what it is. I think that's what it is, Brad. Okay. I think it's to guarantee him, and then whatever they make off him, that's what he gets that certain percentage. I think.
Okay. The way that regular publishing works is always confusing to me, because sometimes you end up having to pay your advance part of it back, depending on how the sales go. It's very frightening to me, but it's also encouraging to see them make this kind of deal. Because I don't want the business to go away. Even with as wonderful as self-publishing is right now, I don't want to see standard publishing, suffer at the same time. I think they both have their merits and maybe their disadvantages, and they're both reasonable things to try for, as long as you know going in what you're getting. I think 13 books means that I've got 13 more opportunities to maybe find out more about his writing.
Joel, would you settle for $3.4 million book deal?
I was just thinking that, you guys are like, I'm surprised how little he's getting paid. I'm kind of going, what, little? I think that it's nice to see publishers putting money into like individual artists. 3.4 million and stuff like that is, I guess, would be kind of like the small end of what like a movie star would make, depending on which movie star we're talking about. But it's really cool to see that, plus whatever royalties he's going to be getting going into someone that's writing sci-fi. So this isn't like New York Times bestseller kind of like very accessible stuff. It's a very specific genre of writing. And I think in the article that you posted, there was a couple of notes where he was talking about staying grounded and just wanting to keep on writing so that he can bring more and more people into a genre that he loves. And when he was asked about his success, he's like, well, my wife keeps me in check, because after I'm done jumping up and down about my $3.4 million deal, she tells me to take out the trash. And the other thing was that even though it's like there was the combination of like the critical acclaim, but like his sales, apparently the publisher is there. They're investing in their future as much as they are his, because his books have a very long shelf life, from what I read. And it makes me want to check him out. And it's kind of sad that, as big of a geek as I am, like, I don't read a lot of sci-fi, because outside of the big canon stuff like Star Trek and Star Wars and a few comics, I don't have anything to kind of bring me in. I don't have any new IPs that have caught my attention, because these days we're all just bombarded with visual marketing for movies and TV shows and video games, and there's not a lot of ads for books. It's really almost still word of mouth. Podcasts and Twitter and like if you're in a book club is how you're going to find out about new sci-fi, literature.
I think what I'm going to do is, after I'm done reading the book I'm reading right now, is I'm going to dig into that first Old Man's War, because it sounds like such a fascinating subject or a concept for a book. And
what is the concept for Old Man's War?
I think it has to do with they're fighting an alien, but they don't want to use young people for some reason, because something about they have to go a long distance and time difference or something like that. I forget exactly what it is, but it sound from what I heard when somebody described it to me, it sounded very interesting. I'm not very good at actually relaying what I what I was described to. So, yeah, I guess we'll all have to Google that and find out exactly what that's about. So.
Yeah, also keep in mind 3.4 million is life-changing, and it's also not the only thing he's ever going to write as well. So he's got a guarantee for the rest of his life that he doesn't have to go back to work, to a regular job,
No,
to do
that's very
anything
true.
else. And so
Yeah.
if he had just gotten the deal split up 13 times and just each individual book he got a deal one at a time, he would always have that hanging over his head. And now he can do this. He's got eyes on him. Hollywood's probably going to come calling and start asking about adapting some of his stuff or seeing if he's going to come to them with script ideas. It's an amazing opportunity for him. And, again, an opportunity for people who don't know his stuff already to now find out more about him. I'll put him on my list. I've already promised my next book after the one I'm reading now is going to be Tom Merritt's Citadel 44. But after that, I'll probably look at this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I wish somebody would pay me $35,000 a year to run Galactic Netcast. That would be awesome. So if anybody with that kind of money listening, you know how to get a hold of me.
Patreon.com/galacticnetcasts.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of math before the show, and I just wrote a short story. So I took the amount of money he made for the 13 books. I split it up at 13. I split it up by basically how many words in an average novel and then how many words my short story were. Then I minused it in about a third because of how talented he is probably versus how talented I am. I'm looking at about $3,000 is what it would be equally if someone paid me for my short story. I'd be happy with that. Not a bad day.
Yeah, and I mean, as a creator, I mean, we also have lives, we all have bills and rent to pay, and one of the things that is so freeing as a creator is to know that you don't have to worry about that. You know, like if you have enough coming in from your creative endeavors that, you know, everything is taken care of, you're not budgeting every time you leave the house, and you can just like set aside the time. You still have to work, like you're still going to create. I mean, hopefully that's in your blood and you just have to do it. But to have that freedom, to have that kind of guaranteed, you know, income and you know, sign up to do all those books, like he can plan long term creatively and really achieve the things that he wants to do without having to worry about, well, is this book going to bring enough to put my kids through college, or do I have to, you know, make a fluff novel to do that? Like he can do what he wants, you know, with the publisher and with his properties or their properties. I think it's going to be really, really good for not only just him, but just, you know, his creativity and obviously the fans of his books too.
But he can also get up and watch Netflix all day and he has to finish these 13 books. But I could see that day of like, I don't want to do anything. I got $3.4 million in the bank. I think I'm gonna lay around.
Let's write our own stories now. Our discussion topic this week is, if you could get a sci-fi movie produced, what would it be about, and what would make it, or why would it make a good film? This kind of goes back to the way we used to do our discussion topics. So let's just kind of go around the room. Who wants to go first with this question?
Well, I think Brad was the first in the doc, so I'm going to nominate Brad.
All right. Well, I was thinking that I would, and we're seeing more of it now in articles and parallel dimensions. I think I would be interested to see something that was sort of like a cross between Run Lola Run. Now, when I say Run Lola Run, have you folks seen this film?
Yes. Great movie.
Okay. I would like to see something that's like got some of the urgency of Run Lola Run, and also kind of the different views of different outcomes of some storyline. I would like it to be as accessible as The Martian. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about that book is, yes, they're grappling science. Yes, you know, there's a lot of things going on, but it's still accessible at the end of the day. And then I would like to have it be, I don't know if you guys have seen Tomorrowland yet.
Not yet. It's on my list.
No.
the nice thing about Tomorrowland is that there is a message of hope, and it's not like I mean, like San Andreas is coming out pretty soon, and that's disaster porn. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. It's California's being split in half by a huge earthquake, and we're seeing, we've seen a number of these disaster porn type films, but it was really refreshing to see something that had a message of hope, and I would like to see something that would kind of work these three elements together to have you enter a film, be introduced to a concept if you're not a sci-fi geek, to kind of get a basic understanding of parallel dimensions, and mathematically speaking, they've kind of been proven, and we're working to prove it with the Hadron Collider, and the implications of what that is, and still have it be accessible, and still you come away feeling okay about that. That's not an evil, horrible thing that's being done, that there is a message of hope to be seen from that scientific discovery. So that's the kind of film I would want to produce, sci-fi wise.
All right, good answer. A lot of different layers there, Brad. I like that. I like that. All right.
And probably overly complex, and would have to be like a 3.5, 4-hour film. So.
Well, that's what editors are for.
They'll have to be like a David Lynch cut that's 6 hours long that you can purchase. Yeah.
All right. Let's let our guest geek have a stab at this question. Joel, what did you come up with?
Well, I think after thinking about this for a little while this afternoon, what I came up with was a real sci-fi western. Now we're all familiar with Star Wars, and that a lot of people think that it's very western-like in terms that it's dirty sci-fi. Things are grungy. There's rust on things. It's not Star Trek. It's got a very different aesthetic. I want to emphasize like a real Western in space. So more Western than space, if you can follow me. Imagine that first contact was made in the late 1800s, and that like Wild West culture, cowboy hats and six-shooters prevails into the far reaches of space. Imagine Justified on FX meets Mass Effect. Less powers, more guns, and still with that fun, drawn-out, funny way of talking. Like right before you're going to use your, phaser or blaster to blow some bad guy away, you're going to tell him politely how much of a dick he is before you blow his brains out. I think it would be really fun to see that kind of like spaghetti Western culture, but with people with guns in their bionic arm, and maybe a little Deus Ex thrown in there, like all kinds of really weird stuff that you could do aesthetically to make what ultimately are really good stories. Like any Western that's been kind of modernized, like Justified, I find it such a compelling story, and it's such the anti-hero, and to do that in a sci-fi theater, I think would just be a ton of fun.
You had me at Justified. Totally. I just got done reading the Elmore Leonard 3 short novels he did about Raylan Givens. And then he has one more book that I'm going to read later on that are all about that character. But that show it's just been the best show in general. And for the same reasons you said, that guy will just tell you, hey, you know what, you're being an asshole, and there ain't room enough for two of us like that. So why don't you just sit down? Amazing.
Oh well, Corey, since you're okay, go ahead, Joel.
No, I was just gonna follow up and say, like, one of my favorite things about Justified is it's how rough Raylan Given is. Like he punches bad guys. Like when Dewey Crow, he doesn't even say hello to him. He doesn't tell him why he's there to visit. The first thing he does is break his nose, just because he can.
Yep.
And Dewey isn't smart enough to do anything else about it. That kind of thing in space would just be it would scratch all the itches that I would have.
I think there's been a lot of attempts at this. I think more on TV than movies.
Firefly was definitely a good attempt.
Firefly. And there's been a couple other ones too. There's that what was that movie back in the 70s with the theme park with the robots and
Westworld.
Yeah, they're making it into a show on Showtime. And that's sort of sounds like what you're talking about, but not really.
Yeah, there'd be no giant mechanical spiders either, just to be clear.
Hear, hear.
Aw.
Well, maybe Corey's got giant mechanical spiders in his story. What did you come up with, Corey?
I could put giant mechanical spiders in anything. I don't even care. No, I lend myself more towards longer storytelling. Either I'll do a short story or I'll do a TV series. So I probably wouldn't do a film, but I did have an idea a few years ago that I wanted to do as maybe a sci-fi event series that was about a company that discovers a way to bring people back from the dead for one day only. And it was basically a bunch of vignettes, and it was a little bit X-Files because there was a guy who was a representative for the company who was going around and kind of tracking the people that they brought back, not inserting himself into what they're doing because they only get one day of life, but just kind of keeping an eye on things for the company's interests. And he's not really so much of an insider for the company, so there's a little bit of conspiracy theory behind it. But it's about these people who are brought back to life and living that one day, and what would they do? What would their families and loved ones do when they have them back? And it was a bunch of different stories about different characters. There was certainly one about, in my mind, it was somebody like Freddie Mercury. What if we brought Freddie Mercury back for one day, and he got to see how much people have loved him and still continue to love him since he's passed away? And they, of course, want him to do a concert, a big world concert. And he just wants to go and experience the world again. It's that kind of thing. So it's as much about human emotion as a scientific sci-fi slant. And then there would be a point where I would have a character that would come back to life and then not die after the 24-hour period. And what does that do? What does the company do with that person when they suddenly realize that it doesn't expire? So that was kind of more of where my head was when it comes to science fiction. I'm always a little bit darker, a little bit less high science fiction, and more of those like one little quirk that kind of sets things off. And I was going to call it One Day, and then Marvel came out with their stupid One More Day and ruined the title, so I put it away.
Stupid Marvel, always ruining things.
Tarring them in their creativity.
Yeah. No, it sounds interesting. It sounds when I think of you, Corey, that's the kind of story that I thought that you would come up with, because you're a very unconventional, not straightforward science fiction kind of person, and I like that about you.
Thank you. You know what would make a great movie?
What?
Well, have you taken your turn yet, Dave?
No, I was about to launch into it, but go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was going to say mine's like almost the complete opposite of yours. And I actually came up with it during this conversation. I wanted to do something in space with kind of a space opera feel to it. But I'm like, Star Trek has done it. I wanted kind of something like Star Trek, but not really Star Trek, not really Star Wars, maybe something within our own solar system. And then I came to the conclusion that I want a movie that follows the history of human space exploration from the very way in the past, like people coming up with the theories of how the universe works and astrophysics and all that stuff, to the way far future, like where we've got this superpower, like we're going all over the universe, and like the different steps, like maybe it would be made into like sections of the movie, or maybe it would go back and forth. Kind of like that. What was the movie? Was it the Wachowskis?
Cloud Atlas.
Yeah, Cloud Atlas. Kind of like that, where it goes back and forth. But I wanted a theme, like a continuing theme throughout it, and I thought that maybe like aliens, like seeded our planet, and they've been influencing us the entire time without us even realizing it. And at the end, the big realization is aliens. They fed us the information, they fed us the technology without nobody even knowing it, and it would be like a big shocker at the very end of the film, and that's my idea for the kind of sci-fi film that I want. I want to see each step in our development, like actual things like Apollo 11, the space shuttle, the International Space Station, and us going into the solar system making colonies on terraforming planets, developing light speed or faster than light travel, and all this crazy technology, but kind of grounded in the history of humankind. So that's my story idea.
That could be very fun.
Nice.
Thank you. So you wanted to say something?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, what would make a really good movie?
What would?
The Life Engineered by J.F. DeBow.
Oh my God! Yes, you're right. Totally right. And I'm glad that you brought that up. Funny, it's like it was there on the our shared document that we're all reading.
It's also there in my heart because J.F. DeBow is so awesome.
Yeah, J.F. DeBow has become a rising star in the world of all things internet, and I'm so glad that we all know him. And he has a book called, like Corey said, The Life Engineered, and he's trying to win the sword and laser competition, which ends midnight Pacific Standard Time this Sunday. And so he's got this book, and the way that you can help is by going to jfdubeau, jfdubeau.com/tadbooks, and help his dream come true, because he wants to someday be like John Scalzi. He wants to, write books for a living. And okay, who has read The Life Engineered, or either completely or part of it?
I am holding out until I have my copy. I'm not going to spoil myself like that, but I'm very much looking forward to it.
Okay, so it's a very cool story that takes place in the future, and I'm probably going to get this all wrong. It involves humans are gone, and robots are the predominant.
They're sort of our descendants. We've descended into our humanity has been taken over by robots, but in a good way.
Yeah, it's a very positive story, and JF is trying to get it funded. He's got like 56 days left in the Inkshares campaign to get the actual book funded, and there's a way that you can get a free book. Like, you sign up for Inkshares, and they give you a certain amount of credit, and then you share it and you get more credit, and that way you can use that free. You don't have to spend a single dime to get this book, to get a actual physical copy of The Life Engineered, and at the same time help him achieve that dream, and then help him also win the sword and laser competition, because they're going to select the top 5 books, and he's currently at number 4, I believe. The top 5 books will get published through the Sword and Laser imprint, or publishing arm of the Sword and Laser podcast, and then it will be like featured on the Sword and Laser podcast. So it could be a big boost for JF. So again, please support JF. He's done a lot with us. He's been a contributor to Galactic Netcasts, and he's going to do more for us in the future. jfdubeau.com/tadbooks, and I'm sure that he would appreciate that very much.
He's an excellent guy.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he is.
He's been the source of some of our longer podcasts, and he'll admit that too. He knows that he talks a lot, and he's got a lot to say, and we appreciate that about him.
I have no idea what that's like.
Corey, thanks for coming on. Thanks for being on the guest panel this week.
Always a pleasure. Host
panel. What do you have going on these days? Do you want to tell people any projects you're working on, or where you want people to find you online?
I have a very neglected blog. I did write a couple of things this last week or so, and maybe I'll do a little bit more. But mostly I'm on the Elts Nerds with Gregor Sprague at eltsnerds.com. You can see the shows that we record. Weekly we do a show where we catch up on TV stuff and movies called What Else Is On. And Gregor actually does a lot of great content himself. He does a show called Pod Save the Queen about British television that he's really into. And occasionally he's picked up the slack for where I left him off with the comic book show, The 616. But more importantly, he does the splash page stuff for Galactic Netcasts, and he does the news stuff when it comes to comic books on this network. And that's why he's so cool, and I'm glad I get to hang out with him.
Yeah, and hopefully you'll be doing more for us soon. And I'm really looking forward to it when that day happens.
When it happens.
Yes. All right, Joel Duggan, thank you for coming on and being our guest geek this week. Again, where can people find your stuff online? What do you want people to know about you? Tell us more.
Well, it's been my pleasure, man. I really had a good time tonight. And you can find me at joelduggan.com. That's kind of a catch-all. You can find links to my other blogs, links to all the social media sites that I'm on, Twitter, Tumblr, DeviantArt. It's usually just my name, Joel Duggan, but it's all there from joelduggan.com. You can find links to Alison Delorey's Scotia's Sinker. You can also find links to my book, Starcrossed Volume 1. And check out the Citadel Cafe podcast. If you like sci-fi stuff, basically the Citadel Cafe is me and my friends hanging out and talking about the geeky stuff that we're into. And right now, during the Game of Thrones Season 5, that's all that we're into. We do a Winter is Coming segment for the full 10 episodes, completely full of spoilers, so you want to watch the current episode before you listen to my podcast, but it's a lot of fun. I've been having a lot of really great guests on over the last little while. Brian Dunaway, actually, from Comics Coast to Coast, came on. I think around, actually it was my birthday. It was in April 29th, Brian came on. So we're having a lot of fun over there. Just joelduggan.com, thecitadelcafe.com, and starcrossedonline.com. That's it.
You can also find Joel's Patreon at patreon.com/JoelDuggan if you want to support his Starcrossed comics, which are excellent.
Thank you very much, yes.
Nice.
I have one more question before we get out of here. Is there still snow on the ground on the East Coast?
Well, I want to say no, because we have had a couple of days that were up around 25 degrees, but I was at the East Coast Comic Expo in Moncton on May 16th, and driving over Cobequid Pass, there was a couple feet of snow in places, still.
Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, Canada.
Poor people. I feel so sorry for you.
Yes, it's all gone in Halifax, though. The leaves are on the trees. It's actually quite pretty here now.
Nice. Okay. All right. That's going to do it for this episode of the Sci-Fi Geeks Club. Thanks to everybody for listening and watching and all that stuff. And you can find out all about our shows, including Brad's Adventure Party podcast at galacticnetcasts.com. By the way, Brad, who is the next guest that you have lined up?
Pardon?
Who do you got coming up on the show? On the podcast?
Actually, I needed to report that I will be out of town this weekend, and we are going to be taking this week off.
It's a mystery guest.
Yes, Anessa and I have tickets to see Craig Ferguson, so we aren't going to be getting back until later on Sunday. So.
Are you all caught up? Are you all edited, and do you have all the shows out that you've got recorded?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that, Dave. I am still in the middle of editing last week's episode.
Okay.
So.
You gonna have that out soon?
Yes. What is today? Thursday?
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Probably Friday evening. That's my target date. I've had a lot of personal things kind of come up too, and that's been mucking up my time. And I'm going to have to start ditching some activities that I've been doing. I can't do everything anymore. So.
Oh, okay.
It'll be worth the wait.
Yeah, definitely. Adventure.
Well, hopefully.
It's an awesome podcast. All right, I'm Dave Nelson on behalf of Brad, Anessa, Matt, and Joel. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye, Dad.
Bye, Dad.